Daniel Bradford adjusted his tie in the hallway mirror of his suburban home. For 8 years, this had been his morning routine, simple, precise, comforting. Today, though, the reflection staring back at him felt unfamiliar, fractured. It was a face that had seen the world's most dangerous waters, but desperately wanted the illusion of something normal. The morning sun filtered gently through the luxurious curtains Jennifer had insisted on, their pristine fabric a cruel reminder of the facade they maintained. Every detail in the house, from the gleaming marble countertops to the children's artwork stuck on the fridge with little magnets, spoke of a life carefully curated. Family photos, frozen smiles from happier times, lined the walls. Yet below this picture-perfect suburban life lay unspoken tensions simmering beneath the surface. From the stairs came the sound of voices. Emma, their energetic 8-year-old daughter, her golden pigtails bouncing as she rushed down, followed cautiously by 6-year-old Michael clutching his favorite stuffed dinosaur. Their carefree laughter and innocent chatter were among the few things still anchoring Daniel's sanity amid the storm he sensed building. Emma came over, whispering about her mother's frequent phone calls to a man with a scary voice. That name, Andre Velasquez, hit Daniel like a rogue wave washing over his skin. The innocence in his children's words was a stark contrast to the dangerous reality lurking just out of sight. Jennifer entered the kitchen, her auburn hair styled flawlessly and makeup impeccable despite the early hour. But Daniel saw the tension tightening her slender frame, the nervous way she toyed with a bracelet, and the sharp drop in her voice as she ended a phone call. "We'll talk tonight," she whispered, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. 15 years with the Navy SEALs had taught Daniel to read people like nautical charts. Jennifer's pages were filled with secrets she thought she was hiding, but to Daniel, they were distress signals blazing across the horizon. Late-night phone calls, unexplained outings, the flicker of fear whenever he touched her, all pieces of a puzzle he had pretended not to solve. He tested the waters, mentioning he'd be working late to finalize a maritime security contract. A fleeting relief crossed her face, so quick only a trained operator like his could catch it. She mentioned a dinner with an old friend, Annie Ashley, who'd moved to Portland months ago. Another lie layered atop the growing deception around him. After the family left for their respective days, Daniel lingered, staring at a Christmas photo on the fridge, 4 smiling faces trapped in a moment of false bliss. Just 6 months ago, he believed in that perfect life. His SEAL trident tattoo, usually hidden beneath his business shirts, seemed to burn against his chest as memories of Coronado and BUD/S training flickered through his mind. Then his phone buzzed with a message from Mitchell, his business partner and closest confidant. Intel came through. "You're not going to like it." Bradford Associates wasn't just a security consulting firm. It was a cover for specialized maritime operations. When corporate giants needed discreet solutions beyond legal limits, especially involving water-based threats or coastal security, they called him. His decade and a half in naval special warfare had equipped him with rare skills and contacts. Mitchell handled the legitimate front, keeping things clean and above board. At their downtown office, Mitchell awaited with a manila folder that seemed to weigh heavy with bad news. Photos and documents detailed the criminal empire of Andre Velasquez, a mid-level mobster with operations expanding from Chicago. Money laundering, drug distribution through port facilities, protection rackets targeting shipping companies. Worse, Velasquez had been dating Jennifer for 4 months. The revelation hit Daniel like a depth charge. His wife, the mother of his children, had been compromised by organized crime. But there was more. The boutique Jennifer had been passionate about opening, supposedly an independent venture funded by mysterious investors, was revealed as a front for Velasquez's criminal enterprises, money flowing through shell companies designed to wash dirty cash clean. Most alarming were Velasquez's recent inquiries. The gangster had been asking specific questions about Daniel's background, his skill set, his military service record. Someone had fed Velasquez intelligence about Daniel's SEAL career, operations in Afghanistan's river valleys, maritime interdictions off Somalia, direct action missions that officially never happened. "What kind of questions?" Daniel asked, his voice carrying the calm precision learned during countless pre-mission briefings. "The kind that suggest he knows you're more than just a security consultant," Mitchell replied grimly. "The kind that suggests he's planning something. Soon." Daniel's instincts, honed by years of underwater infiltrations and beach reconnaissance, ignited like a flare in the darkness. When your family is targeted, hesitation is a luxury you can't afford. The first rule of naval special warfare: control the battle space before the enemy knows you're there. He headed home, heart pounding with the familiar pre-combat rhythm, only to receive Jennifer's trembling call. Someone was there, waiting to talk. Her voice carried the terror of someone who'd realized they were drowning in waters far deeper than they could handle. Speeding through suburban streets that suddenly felt like hostile territory, Daniel's tactical mind automatically began calculating approach routes, exit strategies, and threat assessments. In the distance, he could see the black Lincoln Continental sitting in his driveway like a shark fin cutting through calm waters. His perfect civilian life was over. But Andre Velasquez had made a critical error. He'd chosen to threaten a man who'd spent 15 years learning to be invisible beneath the surface, to strike without warning, to complete impossible missions in the world's most dangerous waters. The gangster thought he was dealing with another suburban husband. He was about to discover why the Navy SEALs were called the silent professionals, and why their motto, "The only easy day was yesterday," had become legendary among America's enemies. The game was about to begin, and Daniel Bradford intended to control every move. Daniel parked 3 houses down from his own, muscle memory from countless surveillance operations in hostile territory kicking in automatically. The black Lincoln was still in his driveway, joined by a second vehicle, a dark SUV that screamed professional muscle from 50 yards away. Through his living room window, he could see silhouettes moving around like predators in his den. His phone buzzed with a text from Celeste, at grocery store. "Won't be back until 3 p.m. Children safe at school." One small mercy. Whatever was happening inside his house, at least Emma and Michael were out of harm's way. Daniel opened his glove compartment and retrieved his Sig Sauer P226, the same model he'd carried during maritime operations with SEAL Team 6. Officially, he'd turned in all government-issued equipment upon retirement. Unofficially, a man who'd spent 15 years conducting direct action missions in the world's most dangerous waters never truly retired. He just changed theaters of operation. Moving through his neighbor's backyard, Daniel approached his house from the rear, using skills learned during countless beach reconnaissance missions. The Johnsons were vacationing in Florida, their empty house providing perfect cover for infiltration. From their back fence, he had a clear view into his kitchen and part of the living room. Jennifer sat on their cream-colored sofa, hands folded in her lap, face pale but defiant. Across from her, Andre Velasquez lounged in Daniel's favorite armchair as if he owned the place. He was exactly what the photographs had suggested: mid-40s, olive skin, expensive clothes that couldn't quite hide the predator underneath. Gold watch, gold chain, gold teeth when he smiled. 2 other men flanked the room. The larger one, built like a linebacker, stood near the front window. The second, wiry and nervous, paced near the kitchen entrance. Both were armed, shoulder holsters visible beneath their jackets like dorsal fins breaking the surface. Daniel could read the tactical situation like a pre-mission briefing. Velasquez was confident, relaxed. This wasn't a kidnapping or home invasion. It was a power demonstration. The gangster wanted Daniel to walk into his own house and find them there, wanted to establish dominance on Daniel's home territory. Amateur mistake. In Coronado, they'd taught him that underestimating a SEAL's tactical awareness was usually the last error an enemy made. His phone vibrated with a text from Jennifer's number, though he knew she wasn't sending it. "Come inside." Time to talk like men. Instead of entering through the front door like Velasquez expected, Daniel slipped through his basement window, an entry point he'd prepared years ago as part of personal security protocols learned during SEAL training. The basement connected to his home office through a hidden door behind his bookshelf, a modification inspired by safe house designs from his Team 6 days. His office contained secrets Jennifer had never discovered. Behind a false panel in his desk, Daniel retrieved a second weapon, tactical radio, and most importantly, a file labeled Chicago Outfit Current Operations, intelligence Mitchell had helped him compile over the past year. In naval special warfare, they'd taught him that information was as valuable as ammunition. Now he was glad for that paranoia. From his office, he could hear voices upstairs. Velasquez's Chicago accent, rough around the edges despite expensive education. Jennifer's voice, higher pitched than usual, stressed. Told you he'd be here by now, Velasquez was saying. Maybe your husband ain't as tough as his reputation suggests. You don't know him, Jennifer replied. Despite everything, Daniel felt a flicker of pride at the steel in her voice. Oh, but I do know him. Daniel Bradford, former Navy SEAL. 15 years of direct action before he went private. They called him Poseidon because he could appear from nowhere and disappear beneath the waves without a trace. Daniel smiled grimly. The intelligence was accurate but incomplete. Velasquez knew about his SEAL career, but not about his current network of operators. Former teammates scattered across private military companies, federal agencies, and corporate security firms. The gangster was operating with dated information from incomplete files. He activated his tactical radio and sent a coded message to Mitchell, Nest compromised. Execute Trident Protocol. Trident Protocol was their emergency communication system, named after the SEAL warfare pin, designed for situations exactly like this. Within minutes, Mitchell would alert their entire network. Former SEAL operators now working private security, Marine Force recon veterans with flexible moral codes, and at least 3 federal agents who owed Daniel their lives from operations that officially never happened. Moving silently through the house's lower level, Daniel positioned himself beneath the living room. His SEAL training had taught him to move like a ghost through any environment, whether underwater, in hostile urban terrain, or his own suburban home. He knew exactly which floorboards creaked, which shadows provided concealment. His phone buzzed again. This time, a photo message from Jennifer's phone, Emma and Michael at their school playground, taken from a distance with a telephoto lens. The message was clear without words. Daniel's blood ran cold, then hot like molten steel. Threatening him was one thing. Threatening his children crossed a line that Andre Velasquez didn't understand the significance of. In Ramadi, they'd had a saying among the SEAL teams, touch a frogman's family, and you'll discover why we're called sea monsters. Daniel typed a response. Coming up now. We need to talk. He emerged from his office and walked calmly up the stairs, making enough noise to announce his arrival. The measured footsteps of a professional who'd learned to control fear and project calm under the most extreme circumstances. When he entered the living room, Velasquez's men tensed, hands drifting toward their weapons like sharks sensing blood in the water. Easy, boys, Velasquez said, gesturing for them to relax. Mr. Bradford and I are just going to have a civilized conversation. Daniel took in the scene with tactical precision, honed through hundreds of high-risk operations. Jennifer looked relieved but guilty, eyes not quite meeting his. Velasquez studied Daniel with predatory intensity, sizing up what he thought was just another suburban dad. The 2 bodyguards were professionals, but not elite, good enough to intimidate civilians, inadequate against someone with Daniel's training. The room felt like the calm before a storm, tension thick as seawater. Daniel had spent 15 years learning to read such moments, to sense when violence was about to erupt like a depth charge detonating in dark waters. His SEAL training screamed warnings about tactical positioning, escape routes, and threat assessment. But more than that, his warrior's instinct, forged in the crucible of Coronado and tempered in the fires of Iraq and Afghanistan, told him this confrontation was about more than just his marriage. This was about survival, family, and everything he'd fought to protect during his years as America's silent guardian beneath the waves. The game was about to begin, and Daniel Bradford intended to remind everyone in the room why Navy SEALs were considered the ocean's apex predators. Andre Velasquez, the gangster said, not standing, not offering his hand. I've been looking forward to meeting you. I can't say the feeling is mutual, Daniel replied, moving to stand behind the sofa where Jennifer sat. Close enough to protect her, far enough to maintain tactical mobility. Lessons learned from close-quarters battle training at Dam Neck. Sit down, Bradford. We got business to discuss. I'll stand. Daniel's voice carried the calm authority of someone who'd commanded SEAL fire teams in hostile territory. Velasquez's smile didn't reach his eyes. You know, most men in your position would be a little more cooperative, especially considering the circumstances. Most men in my position have never had to extract hostages from a Taliban compound while under heavy fire, Daniel replied calmly. Different perspective on what constitutes a real threat. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Velasquez's casual demeanor hardened, and his men shifted nervously like sharks sensing blood in unfamiliar waters. You think this is a joke? Velasquez leaned forward. You think I'm some small-time punk you can intimidate with war stories? I think you're a mid-level operator from Chicago who's made the mistake of bringing a knife to a gunfight, Daniel said. I also think you have about 30 seconds to explain what you want before this conversation takes a turn you won't enjoy. Danny, please, Jennifer started, but Velasquez cut her off with a gesture. What I want is simple, the gangster said. Your wife wants a divorce. I'm here to make sure you don't cause any complications. Daniel looked down at Jennifer, who still couldn't meet his eyes. The woman he'd married, the mother of his children, sitting there like a stranger caught in a riptide. Is that true, Jen? She swallowed hard. Yes, I want a divorce. Then you should have asked for one, Daniel said quietly. You didn't need to bring muscle to our house. See, that's where you're wrong, Velasquez interjected. Jennifer told me all about you, your background, your skills, your connections. She was worried you might not take the news well. So she asked her boyfriend to threaten me in my own home, Daniel finished. I prefer to think of it as providing security during a difficult transition. Daniel studied Velasquez's face, reading micro-expressions most people missed, a skill honed through years of interrogating high-value targets in Iraq and Afghanistan. Confidence, yes, but also something else. Anticipation. This wasn't just about Jennifer or the divorce. This was about something bigger. What do you really want, Velasquez? The gangster's smile widened. Smart man. Jennifer told me you were smart. He reached into his jacket and Daniel tensed, but Velasquez only withdrew a manila envelope. I want you to take a look at these. He tossed the envelope onto the coffee table. Daniel picked it up, opened it, and immediately understood why Velasquez was so confident. Photographs. Daniel entering a warehouse in the Dock District 6 months ago. Daniel meeting with Ernesto Avery, a known arms dealer. Daniel accepting a briefcase from Craig Schwartz, a money launderer who'd been on the FBI's watch list for years. All legitimate business meetings for legitimate security contracts, but photographed without context. They looked like something else entirely, like a Navy SEAL gone rogue, selling his skills to the highest bidder. Insurance, Velasquez explained. In case you decide to be uncooperative. Daniel set the photos down carefully, his mind already racing through tactical options. In SEAL training, they taught him that every problem had a solution. You just had to be willing to think outside conventional parameters. These prove nothing. They don't have to. Federal prosecutors love a good narrative. Bradford, former Navy SEAL gone bad. Using his military connections for illegal arms deals, money laundering. Even if they can't prove it in court, the investigation alone would destroy your business, your reputation, your freedom. Now Daniel understood. This wasn't about Jennifer. This was about eliminating him as a potential threat to Velasquez's operations in the city. The divorce was just a convenient cover story, classic misdirection that would have impressed his old instructors at the Naval Special Warfare Development Group. "What are your terms?" Daniel asked. "Simple. You sign the divorce papers, give Jennifer everything she wants, and disappear. Change cities, change careers, change your life. In return, these photos disappear and everyone stays healthy." "And if I refuse?" Velasquez's smile turned predatory. "Then the photos go to the FBI, and those beautiful children of yours get to visit Daddy in federal prison. Assuming Daddy survives long enough to go to trial." The threat hung in the air like cordite smoke. Daniel could feel Jennifer's eyes on him, could sense the fear radiating from her. She'd gotten in over her head with Velasquez, but now she was trapped just as surely as he was. Daniel's SEAL training kicked in, the ability to compartmentalize emotion, to think tactically even under extreme stress. Velasquez had made one crucial error. He'd assumed that a former naval special warfare operator would play by civilian rules. "I need time to think about it," Daniel said. "You got 24 hours. Velasquez stood, buttoning his jacket. "Tomorrow night, same time. You give me an answer, or I make the decision for you." The three men moved toward the front door, but Velasquez paused at the threshold. "Oh, and Bradford, don't try anything clever. Those photos are just copies, and my people will be watching your kids. For their protection, of course." After they left, Daniel and Jennifer sat in silence for several minutes. The house felt different now, contaminated, no longer the safe harbor he'd thought it was. Finally, she spoke. "I'm sorry, Danny. I never meant for it to happen like this." Daniel looked at his wife, really looked at her, and saw not the woman he'd married, but a stranger who'd sold him out to save herself. The Jennifer he'd fallen in love with, the one who used to laugh at his sea stories and trace his SEAL trident tattoo with her finger, was gone. "No," he said quietly. "I don't think you did." But as he watched Velasquez's car disappear down the street, Daniel Bradford was already planning his next move. The gangster had made one crucial error that would prove fatal. He'd assumed that a former Navy SEAL would play by civilian rules. In BUD/S training, they'd had a saying, "The only easy day was yesterday." Tomorrow was going to be anything but easy for Andre Velasquez. The hunter had just become the hunted, and Daniel Bradford intended to remind everyone involved why Navy SEALs were considered the ocean's most dangerous predators. The game was on, and Velasquez had no idea he was already swimming in shark-infested waters. 24 hours. Daniel sat in his home office after Jennifer had gone to bed, studying the photographs Velasquez had left behind. Each image was professionally taken, the kind of surveillance work that required patience, resources, and most importantly, advanced intelligence about his movements. This wasn't the product of a local crime boss getting lucky. This was organized, methodical, expensive, which meant Velasquez had backing. Serious backing from people who understood how to conduct maritime-level intelligence operations. Daniel opened his secure laptop and accessed databases that officially didn't exist. His retirement from naval special warfare had been amicable, and certain access privileges had been overlooked during his exit processing, a useful oversight that had served him well in the private sector. Andre Velasquez's file was extensive. Born in Chicago to a mid-level mob family, he'd worked his way up through violence and cunning. But 3 years ago, he'd relocated to Daniel's city with significant financial backing. The source of that backing was listed as unknown in most reports, but Daniel knew how to read between the lines of intelligence files like navigating by dead reckoning. The money was coming from the Torino family out of New Jersey. Old-school Italian-American organized crime with connections that reached into federal law enforcement and port operations along the East Coast. If Velasquez was their advanced scout for expansion into new territory, it explained the sophisticated surveillance and federal-level blackmail strategy. Daniel's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Children are beautiful when they sleep. Emma's room faces the backyard. Michael's faces the street. Sweet dreams. The photo showed his house at night, taken from across the street with military-grade optics. Velasquez wasn't just threatening. He was demonstrating capability like a submarine surfacing just long enough to show its periscope. Daniel moved to his bedroom window and peered through the blinds. A dark sedan was parked 3 houses down, practically invisible except to someone trained in counter-surveillance. Another car would be watching the back of the house. Professional work that reminded him of joint operations with CIA Maritime Division. In the bed behind him, Jennifer pretended to sleep. Her breathing was too controlled, too measured. She was as awake as he was, probably terrified of what she'd set in motion. Daniel made a decision. He slipped out of the house through his basement exit and made his way to the garage, where his motorcycle waited under a tarp. The Kawasaki Ninja was painted matte black and modified for stealth. No reflective surfaces, dampened exhaust, and engine tuning that prioritized quiet operation over speed, like the delivery vehicles they'd used for beach reconnaissance in Iraq. 20 minutes later, Daniel was across town at the 24-hour diner where Mitchell was waiting in a corner booth, his laptop open and files spread across the table. "You look like hell," Mitchell observed as Daniel slid into the opposite seat. "Feel worse. What did you find?" Mitchell turned his laptop around. Andre Velasquez isn't just some Chicago transplant. He's connected to the Torino crime family out of Newark. They've been looking to expand operations westward for the past 5 years. I figured as much. What about local connections? That's where it gets interesting. Mitchell pulled up a series of photographs. Remember Councilman William Conway? The one who's been pushing for waterfront redevelopment. Daniel recognized the face. A local politician with mayoral ambitions and a reputation for getting things done through questionable means. In the Navy, they'd called such people facilitators, politicians who smoothed the way for operations that needed to stay off official radar. Conway has been meeting regularly with Velasquez for the past 6 months, Mitchell continued. Always at the Riverside Hotel, always in the same private dining room. My source in hotel security says they discuss construction contracts, labor unions, and shipping permits. They're setting up a logistics network, Daniel realized. Use legitimate construction and shipping to move drugs and money. Conway provides political cover. Velasquez provides muscle and connections. Gets better or worse, depending on your perspective. Mitchell slid another file across the table. Jennifer's boutique, the one she needed independent investors for. It's being funded through a shell company that traces back to Torino interests. Daniel stared at the financial documents. Jennifer hadn't just been having an affair. She'd been recruited, drawn into an operation as sophisticated as anything he'd encountered during SEAL Team 6 counterterrorism missions. The boutique was meant to be a front for money laundering, and his wife was either a willing participant or a useful idiot caught in a net she never saw coming. "There's more," Mitchell said grimly. "I called in a favor with the FBI. There's no active investigation into you based on those photos Velasquez showed you. Which means they're fake," Daniel finished. "Or at least taken out of context and never submitted to law enforcement." "Exactly. This is pure intimidation backed by nothing but bluff." Daniel felt a cold smile cross his features. In naval special warfare, there was nothing more dangerous than an enemy who overplayed their hand, like a submarine captain who surfaced too close to a destroyer. "What's the plan?" Mitchell asked. Before Daniel could answer, his phone rang. Jennifer's number, but when he answered, Andre Velasquez's voice came through the speaker. "Hello, Bradford. Hope I'm not interrupting anything important. Where's my wife?" "Relax. She's safe. We're just having a little conversation about tomorrow's meeting." There was a pause, then Jennifer's voice, shaky but trying to sound calm. "Danny, I'm okay. We're at the Riverside Hotel. He just wants to talk." The line went dead. Daniel closed the phone and looked at Mitchell. Change of plans. They got Jennifer. This is escalating fast. Maybe we should call the police. "No." Daniel's voice was flat, carrying the authority of someone who'd commanded special operations in hostile waters. Police involvement means media attention, federal investigation, and months of legal proceedings. By the time it's over, Jennifer could be dead and the kids would be targets for retaliation. So what do? Daniel stood, pulling on his jacket. We remind Mr. Velasquez why the Navy doesn't recruit from anger management classes. As they prepared to leave, Daniel activated his secure phone and sent coded messages to contacts he hadn't spoken to in years. Former SEAL team members now working private military contracts. Marine Force recon operators running corporate security. Federal agents who still owed him favors from joint operations that officially never happened. Within minutes, his network was activating like a submarine battle group responding to an enemy contact. The Torinos thought they were dealing with one retired SEAL who'd gone soft in suburbia. They were about to discover that some predators never truly leave the deep water. The Riverside Hotel was a downtown establishment that catered to business travelers and hosted political fundraisers. Built in the 1920s during Prohibition, it had the kind of old-world elegance that made it popular with people who wanted to project respectability while conducting questionable business. Exactly the type of venue organized crime had been using for decades to launder their operations through legitimate fronts. Daniel and Mitchell entered through the lobby, drawing no attention in their business attire. To any observer, they looked like corporate executives arriving for a late meeting. The private dining rooms were on the third floor, accessible by elevator or service stairs. Daniel chose the stairs. Always maintain multiple escape routes, a fundamental principle drilled into every SEAL during close quarters battle training. You sure about this? Mitchell whispered as they climbed. 20 years ago, I extracted a Russian arms dealer from a fortified compound in Chechnya, Daniel replied, his voice carrying the calm certainty of someone who'd completed impossible missions in hostile waters. This is a hotel in downtown America. I'm sure. The third-floor hallway was carpeted in deep red with brass fixtures and oil paintings that screamed expensive taste. The perfect camouflage for criminal enterprises that had been using waterfront properties and legitimate businesses as fronts since Al Capone's Chicago operations in the 1920s. Daniel could hear voices from behind the door of the Wellington Room, Velasquez's favorite meeting spot, according to Mitchell's intelligence. The same room where, according to their files, he'd been conducting business with local politicians and union officials, following the classic organized crime playbook that had controlled Chicago's docks and construction for generations. How many hostiles? Mitchell asked. Daniel pressed his ear to the door, filtering out ambient noise to focus on individual voices. A skill learned during underwater reconnaissance missions where detecting enemy communications could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. 4 or maybe 5. Velasquez, Jennifer, and at least 3 others. Plan. You stay in the hallway. If anyone comes out that isn't me or Jennifer, delay them. Daniel handed Mitchell a small device that looked like a hotel key card. Emergency services override. Triggers the fire alarm and locks down the elevators. Gives us a 10-minute window before hotel security responds. And if hotel security shows up early, tell them you're with the fire department. Badge is in the briefcase. Mitchell looked at the briefcase Daniel had brought. I don't want to know what else is in there, do I? Probably not. Daniel drew his Sig Sauer and attached a suppressor. Not the Hollywood quiet kind that made movies unrealistic, but enough to muffle the sound in a carpeted room. Standard issue for maritime boarding operations where stealth was paramount. He checked his watch, 2:17 a.m. The hotel would be mostly empty except for late-night staff and insomniacs in the bar. Perfect conditions for a surgical extraction with minimal civilian exposure. The Wellington Room's door was solid oak with brass fittings, designed more for elegance than security. Daniel could pick the lock, but that would take time and create noise. Instead, he knocked. Room service, he called out in a voice slightly higher than his normal register. a simple vocal disguise technique learned during covert infiltration training. Footsteps approached the door. Daniel positioned himself at an angle where he'd be partially concealed when the door opened, tactical positioning that had saved his life countless times in hostile boarding operations. "We didn't order anything," came a gravelly voice through the door. "Compliments of the management, sir. Champagne and appetizers from Mr. Velasquez's party." A pause, then the sound of a deadbolt turning. The door opened 6 inches, revealing a heavy-set man with a shoulder holster. Daniel's training kicked in automatically. Assess, engage, neutralize. The man saw Daniel's weapon a split second too late to react. Daniel struck with the butt of his pistol, a precise blow to the temple that dropped the bodyguard instantly. He caught the man's weight and lowered him silently to the floor, muscle memory from countless silent entries during ship boarding operations. Inside the room, Velasquez was holding court at a mahogany table, gesturing expansively with a brandy snifter. Jennifer sat across from him, hands folded tightly in her lap, face pale but alert. 2 other men flanked the room, the same ones from Daniel's house earlier. "See, Jennifer, your husband thinks he's still playing military games," Velasquez was saying. "But this is the real world, where money and connections matter more than whatever warrior training he learned in government service." "You're wrong about him," Jennifer said quietly. "Am I? Then where is he? It's been 3 hours since I called. If he was really as dangerous as his reputation suggests, wouldn't he have found you by now?" Daniel stepped into the room, his weapon trained on Velasquez. "Yeah, I would have." The 2 bodyguards reached for their weapons, but Daniel had already calculated the angles. Years of close-quarters battle training had taught him to read room geometry like nautical charts. "I wouldn't," Daniel said calmly. "Your boss is directly in my line of fire, and at this range, a hollow-point round will go through him and into whoever's standing behind him." Velasquez raised his hand slowly, the brandy snifter still balanced in his right palm. "Easy, Bradford. No need for dramatics. Tell your men to put their weapons on the table." "Slowly." "Do it," Velasquez ordered. The 2 men complied, placing their pistols on the mahogany surface with the reluctant precision of predators acknowledging a superior alpha. "Jennifer, move away from the table," Daniel instructed without taking his eyes off Velasquez. His wife stood on shaky legs and crossed to where Daniel stood. "Danny, I'm sorry. I never meant. We'll talk later." Daniel's voice was ice-cold professional, the same tone he'd used during hostage extractions in the Arabian Gulf. "Right now, Mr. Velasquez and I need to discuss his early retirement from my city." "You can't just—" One of the bodyguards started to protest. "Street fighting is so messy," Daniel interrupted, letting out a small laugh. 15 years as a Navy SEAL taught me how to make problems disappear without a trace." Velasquez stepped back, and Daniel's hand emerged from his pocket holding a small device, a GPS tracker that had been placed on the gangster's car hours earlier during his reconnaissance. "Then you should know," Velasquez snarled, "that your children are—" The gangster never finished the sentence. His fundamental error was forgetting that Daniel Bradford had spent 15 years learning to eliminate threats with surgical precision. The suppressed gunshot was barely louder than a book dropping, but the .40 caliber hollow-point round found its mark with the accuracy that had made Daniel legendary among SEAL Team 6. Velasquez's reaching hand froze 6 inches from his weapon as he looked down at the spreading red stain on his expensive shirt. "That's a through-and-through wound," Daniel said conversationally. "Painful, but not immediately fatal. You've got maybe 20 minutes before shock sets in." The 2 bodyguards looked between their wounded boss and Daniel's unwavering weapon, calculating odds they didn't like. Professional criminals, but not warriors. They understood violence, but not the cold mathematics of combat that separated predators from apex predators. "Here's what's going to happen," Daniel continued. "You're going to call your people and tell them the operation is over. Then you're going to get in your car and drive back to Chicago. If I ever see you in my city again, the next shot goes 6 inches higher and 3 inches to the left. In the hallway, the fire alarm began blaring. Mitchell's signal that hotel security was on the way. "Time to go," Daniel announced. But as they moved toward the door, Velasquez called out weakly, "This isn't over, Bradford. The Torinos, they'll come for you." Daniel paused at the threshold and looked back. In that moment, he made a decision that would change everything. The second shot was perfectly placed. By the time law enforcement found the Wellington room, Daniel Bradford was miles away, planning the next phase of an operation that Andre Velasquez should never have started. But as sirens wailed in the distance, Daniel knew the real war was just beginning. The safe house was a modest cabin an hour outside the city, nestled in woods that provided natural cover and multiple escape routes. Daniel had purchased it through a shell company 3 years earlier, one of several contingency properties he maintained out of professional paranoia learned during his SEAL years, when having a bolt hole could mean the difference between mission success and body bags. Jennifer sat at the kitchen table, staring at a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. She hadn't spoken since they'd left the hotel, and Daniel hadn't pressed her. There would be time for explanations later, after he'd secured their safety using protocols developed for high-value target extractions in hostile territory. Mitchell arrived at dawn with supplies and intelligence updates. He found Daniel on the cabin's front porch, cleaning his weapons with the methodical precision of someone for whom violence was a professional skill. The same ritual Daniel had performed before countless maritime boarding operations, when equipment failure meant death. Hotel security found the bodies, Mitchell reported. 3 dead, Velasquez and his 2 bodyguards. The 4th one, the guy you knocked out, was found tied up in a supply closet. He's claiming he doesn't remember anything. Wise man. Daniel reassembled his Sig Sauer with practiced efficiency, each movement automatic as breathing. What's the official story? Gang violence. The police are treating it as a territorial dispute between crime organizations. No mention of you or Jennifer in the reports. Good. Daniel holstered his weapon and turned to face his partner. What about the Torino family response? Mitchell's expression darkened like storm clouds gathering over open water. That's where things get complicated. I reached out to some contacts in federal law enforcement. The Torinos aren't just angry, they're mobilizing. Word is they're sending Lance Lawrence to clean up the mess. Daniel paused in his weapon maintenance. Lance Lawrence was a name from the darker corners of organized crime, a fixer who specialized in making problems disappear permanently. If the Chicago outfit had been the Navy of organized crime, Lawrence was their equivalent of a SEAL Team 6 operator, precise, lethal, and utterly without conscience. How long do we have? Lawrence flew into the city this morning. My source says he's already meeting with local contacts, putting together a team. Daniel stood, holstering his weapon. The game had just escalated from local enforcement to professional warfare. Then we don't have long. What about the children? Safe for now. I've got Raphael Arnold watching the school, and Celeste has been briefed on emergency protocols. Daniel hesitated, his tactical mind already calculating threat vectors. But Mitchell, Lawrence won't just come for me. He'll target anyone connected to me. I know. Daniel's voice was flat, emotionless, the same tone he'd used when briefing SEAL teams on missions where casualties were expected. That's why we're going to take the initiative. Inside the cabin, Jennifer finally looked up as Daniel and Mitchell entered. Her face was pale but composed, the shock beginning to wear off like the receding tide after a storm surge. I need to know everything, Daniel said, sitting across from her with the directness of a military debrief. How did this start? When did Velasquez first approach you? Jennifer took a shaky breath. 6 months ago. I was looking at spaces for the boutique, and he was there, charming, sophisticated. He said he was an investor looking for legitimate businesses to support. She laughed bitterly. I thought I was so smart, finding independent financing. When did you realize what he really was? Not until it was too late. By then, I was already in too deep. He had photos of us together, records of the money transfers, contracts I'd signed without reading carefully. She met Daniel's eyes for the first time since the hotel. He said if I didn't cooperate, he'd destroy both of us. Cooperate how? Information about your work, your contacts, your schedule. He wanted to know everything about your business dealings, especially the overseas contracts. Daniel exchanged a look with Mitchell. Bradford Associates had lucrative contracts providing maritime security for American businesses operating in unstable regions. Contracts that would be valuable intelligence for criminal organizations looking to expand internationally, just as the Chicago outfit had done with waterfront operations for decades. Did you give him access to my files? Jennifer shook her head. I tried to avoid it, but he kept pressing. Finally, I told him about your home office, about the fact that you sometimes worked late there. He was planning to break in, Daniel realized. Use you as an inside source to bypass security and steal client information. But then something changed. Jennifer continued. About a month ago, he started asking different questions about your background, about specific operations you'd been involved in. It was like he'd learned something that made him more interested in you personally than in your business. What kind of operations? Mitchell leaned forward. He mentioned names, Jennifer said. Places. Kandahar, Somalia. Something about a weapons dealer named Victor Klov. Daniel went very still. Victor Klov had been a Russian arms trafficker who'd sold weapons to Taliban insurgents in Afghanistan, using maritime smuggling routes that Daniel's SEAL team had been tasked to interdict. The operation had been a joint CA-Navy special warfare mission that had eliminated Klov and his entire network, a black operation that officially never happened. How could Velasquez know about Klov? Mitchell asked. Because someone told him, Daniel said grimly. Someone with access to classified naval intelligence files. The implications hung in the air like smoke from a sinking ship. If Velasquez had inside information about Daniel's covert operations, it meant the Torino family had connections that reached into federal intelligence agencies, the same kind of deep state corruption that had allowed organized crime to control waterfront operations for decades. Daniel's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mr. Bradford, we need to meet. I have information about your current situation that you'll want to hear. Midnight. Pier 47. Come alone. Lance Lawrence. The fixer was moving faster than expected, using the same psychological warfare tactics that had made him legendary among criminal organizations. It's a trap, Mitchell said immediately. Of course it's a trap. Daniel was already moving toward his equipment bag, his mind shifting into the tactical planning mode that had kept him alive during hundreds of high-risk operations. But it's also an opportunity to get killed, or to get answers. Daniel pulled out a tactical vest and began checking its ceramic plates with the precision of a submarine crew preparing for dive operations. Lawrence wants to meet, which means he either wants to negotiate or he's confident enough in his preparation to risk a face-to-face encounter. And if it's the latter? Daniel's smile was cold as Arctic water. Then Mr. Lawrence is about to learn why the Torino family should have left sleeping SEALs alone. As night fell over the safe house, Daniel prepared for what could be his final operation. In his years with naval special warfare, he learned that the most dangerous missions weren't the ones with the highest casualty rates. They were the ones where the enemy knew you were coming. Lance Lawrence was expecting him, but Daniel Bradford had spent 15 years exceeding enemy expectations in the world's most dangerous waters. The lion's den was about to discover it had invited in an apex predator. Pier 47 was a commercial fishing dock on the industrial side of the harbor, a maze of warehouses, cranes, and moored vessels that provided countless hiding spots for snipers and ambush teams. At midnight, it would be deserted except for the occasional security patrol, perfect terrain for a professional wet work operation. Daniel arrived an hour early, using the time to scout positions and identify potential threats. Through his night vision scope, he spotted 3 vehicles parked in strategic locations around the pier. A classic triangulation setup designed to prevent escape routes, professional work that reminded him of joint operations he'd conducted with CIA Maritime Division. The waterfront brought back memories Daniel had tried to bury. Somalia, 2019. His SEAL team had been tasked with interdicting a Russian arms shipment bound for al-Shabaab militants. The operation had been textbook: silent approach via combat rubber raiding craft, neutralize the sentries, secure the vessel, eliminate the arms dealer. Victor Clough. That name had been a ghost haunting Daniel's thoughts since Jennifer mentioned it. Clough hadn't just been any arms trafficker. He'd been a former Spetsnaz operator who'd gone rogue, using his military connections to supply weapons to terrorist organizations across 3 continents. His maritime smuggling network had been sophisticated, using everything from fishing trawlers to luxury yachts to move weapons through international waters. Daniel's team had cornered Clough in the cargo hold of a rust bucket freighter off the Somali coast. The Russian had fought like the professional soldier he'd once been, but 15 years of naval special warfare training had given Daniel the edge. The kill shot had been clean: 2 rounds center mass, 1 to the head. Standard procedure. Or so he'd thought. At 11:58 p.m., a black limousine pulled onto the pier and stopped near the edge of the water. A single figure emerged, tall, lean, wearing an expensive overcoat that couldn't quite hide the weapons underneath. Lance Lawrence. Even from a distance, he projected the kind of calm confidence that came from decades of survival in a business where mistakes were fatal. Daniel had read his file during the intelligence briefing. Former Delta Force, discharged under questionable circumstances, disappeared into the shadow world of corporate security and organized crime. Daniel approached from the shadows, his own weapon ready but concealed. As he stepped into the light cast by the limousine's headlights, Lawrence turned to face him. "Mr. Bradford, thank you for coming." "Cut the pleasantries, Lawrence. What do you want?" "To offer you a choice." Lawrence's voice was cultured, educated, the kind of accent that suggested expensive schools and elite military training. "You killed Andre Velasquez, which created a problem for my employers. Problems require solutions. I'm listening. Option 1. You disappear tonight. Take your family and vanish completely. New identities, new lives, new continent, if necessary. In exchange, the Torino family forgets you exist. And option 2. Lawrence smiled, like watching a shark prepare to feed. We settle this the traditional way. You die, your family dies, and everyone associated with you becomes a cautionary tale. Daniel pretended to consider the offer while actually scanning for the positions of Lawrence's backup team. 3 vehicles, probably 2 men per vehicle, plus Lawrence himself. 7 against 1 in an environment they'd chosen and prepared. Poor odds for most people. Acceptable odds for someone with Daniel's training. Counteroffer, Daniel said. You and your people leave my city tonight and never come back. In exchange, I don't kill all of you. Lawrence laughed. You're outnumbered 7-1, Mr. Bradford. This isn't Somalia or the Persian Gulf. You can't just disappear into the water when things go wrong. You're right, Daniel agreed. This isn't Somalia. He triggered the explosive device he'd planted on Lawrence's limousine an hour earlier. A small C4 charge positioned to maximize psychological impact while minimizing collateral damage to nearby vessels. The blast lit up the night sky, turning the expensive car into a fireball that illuminated the entire pier. In the chaos that followed, Daniel moved like the ghost his SEAL handlers had nicknamed him. Silent, deadly, utterly relentless. The first 2 gunmen died before they understood what was happening. Precise shots from Daniel's suppressed weapon, each round finding its mark with the accuracy that had made him legendary among Team 6 operators. The 3rd and 4th managed to return fire, but they were shooting at shadows while Daniel picked them off with surgical precision from positions he'd scouted earlier. Maritime operations had taught him to use water as both concealment and escape route. While Lawrence's men searched the pier, Daniel had slipped beneath the dock structure, using the support pilings as cover while he systematically eliminated threats. By the time the smoke cleared, only Daniel and Lawrence remained standing. The fixer had taken cover behind a shipping container. His composure finally cracked. Blood ran down his face from shrapnel cuts, and his expensive overcoat was torn and singed. "This isn't over," Lawrence called out. "The Torinos have resources you can't imagine. Connections that reach into naval intelligence," Daniel finished, stepping around the container with his weapon raised. "I know. Victor Clough. Someone fed Velasquez classified information about my operations." Lawrence's eyes widened slightly. "You're smarter than they said." "Who's the leak, Lawrence?" "Does it matter? You're a dead man walking. If not tonight, then tomorrow. If not the Torinos, then someone else. You can't fight an entire organization. Watch me." The shot echoed across the water, sending seabirds scattering into the night sky. Lance Lawrence crumpled to the pier, his blood mixing with the salt water that lapped at the dock's edge. As sirens wailed in the distance, Daniel Bradford melted back into the shadows. The war with the Torino family was far from over, but the first battle was won. Now came the hard part, finding the intelligence leak before more professional killers came for his family. But as he disappeared into the maze of warehouses and shipping containers, Daniel's tactical mind was already working the problem. Lawrence had confirmed what he'd suspected. Someone inside naval intelligence had compromised his operations. The Victor Clough mission had been classified at the highest levels, compartmentalized to prevent exactly this kind of security breach, which meant the leak came from someone with serious clearance and serious access. Someone who knew not just about Daniel's current operations, but about classified missions that officially never happened. The hunt for the traitor was about to begin, and Daniel Bradford intended to use every skill he'd learned in 15 years of naval special warfare to find them. After all, there was one thing every SEAL learned during Hell Week. When you're in the deep water and the sharks are circling, the only way to survive is to become the biggest predator in the ocean. The emergency meeting took place in the basement of Mitchell's downtown office building, a location chosen for its electronic shielding and multiple exit routes. Daniel had called in every favor, activated every network connection, and reached out to contacts he hadn't spoken to in years. The result was a gathering that looked like a reunion of Naval Special Warfare's most dangerous alumni. Garrett Thompson arrived first, former Navy cryptologist turned private contractor, his laptop bag containing equipment that could hack into systems most people didn't know existed. During Daniel's SEAL years, Garrett had provided signals intelligence for maritime interdiction operations, breaking enemy communications while Daniel's team moved through hostile waters. He was followed by Joel Martinez, an ex-Marine Force recon operator who now provided specialized security services for Fortune 500 companies. Joel had worked joint operations with Daniel's SEAL team in the Persian Gulf, where they developed the kind of tactical trust that only came from facing death together in the world's most dangerous waters. The third arrival surprised even Daniel. Marcus Webb, a current naval intelligence analyst who owed Daniel his life from an operation off the Somali coast 5 years earlier. Marcus's presence meant Daniel now had inside access to active intelligence files, a resource that could either save his family or get them all killed. "This is about the Torino leak," Daniel began without preamble, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd commanded SEAL fire teams in hostile territory. "Someone inside naval intelligence fed classified information about my operations to a mid-level crime boss. That person is still out there, and they're a threat to anyone who's ever worked with me." Garrett opened his laptop and began typing with the focused intensity Daniel remembered from their joint operations. "I've been monitoring chatter since you called. The Torinos are mobilizing resources on multiple fronts. They've got teams coming in from Chicago, Newark, and Miami." "Timeline?" Joel asked, checking his weapon with the automatic precision of a professional warrior. 48 hours, maybe less. They're not being subtle about it. This is a full-scale war declaration." Marcus looked uncomfortable, his federal employee instincts warring with personal loyalty. "Daniel, what you're asking me to do, accessing personnel files to identify potential leaks. That's career suicide if I'm caught. And if you're not caught, it might save the lives of everyone in this room, Daniel replied. The leak knows about Victor Clough. That operation was compartmentalized at the highest levels of naval intelligence. We're talking about someone with serious clearance and serious access. Marcus hesitated, then began typing on his secure device. I'll need specific parameters. Personnel with access to SEAL team files, operational history in the time frame you mentioned, any anomalous behavior patterns. Start with anyone who's had financial difficulties in the past 2 years, Daniel suggested. The Torinos pay well for information, but they prefer to recruit people who need the money. As Marcus began his database search, Garrett's fingers flew across his keyboard. I'm accessing the hotel security system from the night you took out Velasquez. Want to see who else was there that shouldn't have been? The hotel's guest registry appeared on screen, along with security camera footage from the lobby and parking areas. Garrett fast-forwarded through hours of recorded data, looking for anomalies. There, he said, pausing the footage. Black sedan arrived 30 minutes before the shooting. Left 5 minutes after. License plate is registered to a shell company. Can you trace the shell company? Already on it. More typing, more data streams flowing across the screen. Corporate records show it's owned by another shell company, which is owned by. Interesting. The ultimate owner is listed as a trust fund managed by the law firm of Morrison, Hayes and Associates, high-end criminal defense attorneys who specialize in representing organized crime figures. Joel leaned over Garrett's shoulder. Those are the lawyers who represented the Torino family during the federal racketeering trial 3 years ago. Daniel felt pieces clicking into place like the components of a naval mine being armed. The leak isn't just feeding information to the Torinos. They're working directly with their legal team. This is sophisticated intelligence laundering. Marcus's phone buzzed. I've got something. 3 naval intelligence personnel with access to your operational files have shown anomalous financial patterns in the past 18 months. He rattled off 3 names, but only one made Daniel's blood run cold. Commander Sarah Chun. Wait, Mitchell interrupted. Sarah Chun? The one you worked with on maritime interdiction operations. Daniel stared at the name on Marcus's phone screen. Commander Chun had been the naval intelligence liaison for Daniel's SEAL team during multiple operations, Somalia, the Persian Gulf, the Mediterranean. She'd had access to every classified file, every operational detail, every piece of intelligence that Daniel's team had gathered during their most sensitive missions. What's her financial situation? Daniel asked. Clean on the surface, Marcus replied, scrolling through data. But I'm seeing some irregularities. Her daughter Jessica was diagnosed with leukemia 8 months ago. Experimental treatment, not covered by military insurance. Medical bills in the hundreds of thousands. Let me guess, Garrett said, already typing. Jessica's treatment is being handled by specialists connected to Torino Medical Investments. Bingo. The Torinos didn't just recruit Chun. They created a situation where she had no choice but to cooperate. Daniel closed his eyes, running through the implications. A naval intelligence commander feeding operational data to organized crime was a security breach of catastrophic proportions. It meant the Torinos had access to ongoing SEAL operations, agent identities, and classified methodologies that could compromise national security. There's more, Marcus continued. Chun has been accessing files on former SEAL team operators. Not just you, dozens of them. Names, locations, current employment, family information. She's building a database. The Torinos aren't just targeting Daniel, Joel realized. They're mapping the entire network of former Navy special warfare assets. For what purpose? Recruitment, blackmail, elimination, Daniel said grimly. Take your pick. A criminal organization with access to that kind of intelligence could effectively neutralize federal law enforcement efforts against them. Garrett's computer chimed. I've got Chen's current location. She's not at the Pentagon. She's here in the city. Checked into the Meridian Hotel 6 hours ago. She's here to oversee cleanup operations, Daniel concluded. Make sure the Torino problem gets resolved permanently. What's the play? Joel asked. Daniel was quiet for a moment, considering options. Chun was a federal officer with diplomatic immunity and enough connections to make any direct action against her extremely dangerous. But she was also a traitor who'd sold out American naval assets to organized crime. We're going to have a conversation with Commander Chun, Daniel said finally. Find out exactly how deep this goes and what other operations have been compromised. And then, Mitchell asked. Daniel's smile was as cold as Arctic waters. Then we're going to make sure she never sells out another sailor. As they prepared to move against the traitor in their midst, Daniel activated secure communications with the broader SEAL community. Operators scattered across private security firms, federal agencies, and corporate boardrooms who still lived by the naval special warfare creed. I will never quit. I persevere and thrive on adversity. The Torinos thought they were fighting one retired SEAL. They were about to discover they'd declared war on an entire brotherhood of warriors who never left a teammate behind. The Meridian Hotel was downtown's most prestigious accommodation, the kind of place where federal officials stayed when they wanted to project authority and importance. Commander Chun had registered under her own name, a sign of either supreme confidence or supreme arrogance that reminded Daniel of overconfident submarine commanders who surfaced too close to enemy destroyers. Daniel's team positioned themselves throughout the hotel with the precision of a SEAL boarding party. Garrett took the lobby with his laptop, monitoring security systems and communications. Joel covered the parking garage and rear exits. Marcus remained in the office, providing real-time intelligence support through secure channels. Daniel himself went straight to Chin's room on the 15th floor. Commander Sarah Chun answered her door wearing civilian clothes, but her bearing still carried the unmistakable authority of a career naval officer. At 42, she was everything Daniel remembered: intelligent, composed, and utterly professional. What he hadn't remembered was the exhaustion in her eyes, the weight of someone carrying an impossible burden. Daniel Bradford, she said calmly. I've been expecting you. Have you? Daniel stepped into the suite without invitation, his tactical awareness automatically cataloging exits, sight lines, and potential threats. Please, come in. We have much to discuss. The hotel suite was elegant and spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city's waterfront. Chin gestured for Daniel to sit, then poured herself coffee from the room's service tray, hands steady as a ship's navigator plotting course through hostile waters. How much do you know about the current situation? She asked. I know you've been feeding classified naval intelligence to the Torino crime family. I know your daughter Jessica was diagnosed with leukemia and needs experimental treatment. I know you've compromised the identities of dozens of former SEAL operators. Chin nodded slowly, as if checking off items on a mental list. Impressive. Your network is still functioning at high efficiency. What I don't know is why a decorated naval officer would betray her country and endanger the lives of her former teammates. Chin settled into an armchair across from Daniel, coffee cup balanced precisely in her hands. Tell me, Daniel, in all your years of special operations, how many times did you follow orders that violated the Geneva Convention? The question hit like a torpedo finding its mark. Daniel had served during the height of the War on Terror, when rules of engagement were fluid and operational necessity often trumped legal niceties. This isn't about following orders, Sarah. This is about selling out American operators to organized crime. Is it? Chin leaned forward. The Torino situation became complicated when they approached me 18 months ago. What started as financial blackmail evolved into something much larger. Daniel waited, recognizing the tactical pause of someone preparing to justify the unjustifiable. They have ambitions that extend far beyond traditional organized crime. Chin continued. International arms trafficking, political influence operations, systematic corruption of federal law enforcement. They're building an organization that could effectively operate as a shadow government. And you're helping them. I'm trying to control them. Chin's voice hardened. Channel their activities in directions that serve American naval interests while limiting their domestic impact. The rationalization was as smooth as a submarine's hull, but Daniel could see the fault lines. By selling out SEAL operators, by providing intelligence that gets American servicemen killed, by providing carefully selected intelligence that keeps them focused on external targets rather than internal ones. Chin's composure cracked slightly. Daniel, the Torinos approached me with information about a planned terrorist attack on a naval facility. Information they'd obtained through their criminal networks. I had a choice. Work with them and potentially save American lives, or maintain operational purity and watch sailors die. Daniel studied Chin's face with the intensity he'd once used to read enemy submarine sonar signatures. The commander believed what she was saying, but belief didn't make it any less naive or dangerous. What's the real proposition, Sarah? Join the operation. Use your SEAL network and connections to help manage the Torino partnership. In exchange, your family's safety is guaranteed, and you gain access to intelligence resources that could make Bradford Associates one of the most powerful maritime security firms in the world. And if I refuse? Chin's smile was as cold as Arctic waters. Then the Torinos will kill you, your wife, and your children. And I'll file a report stating that former Navy SEAL Daniel Bradford went rogue and was eliminated while attempting to interfere with an ongoing naval intelligence investigation. Daniel was quiet for a long moment, considering not the offer, but the woman making it. Chin wasn't evil. She was something worse. She was a patriot who'd convinced herself that the ends justified any means, no matter how corrupt or treasonous. One question, Daniel said. How many other operators have you burned? Only those who became problematic. Chin's voice carried the mechanical precision of someone reciting operational parameters. Those who discovered the arrangement and refused to cooperate. Those who posed a threat to operational security. She never finished the sentence. Daniel's suppressed Sig Sauer made barely a whisper as it fired twice into the commander's chest. Those who sold out their shipmates, Daniel finished quietly. As Chin's body slumped in the armchair, Daniel began searching the hotel room. In her briefcase, he found files on 17 former SEAL operators, their current locations, family information, and assessment reports on their potential value to the Torino organization. His secure phone buzzed with a text from Garrett. Hotel security has been compromised. Torino assets in the building. You need to leave now. But as Daniel moved toward the door, he realized it was too late. Footsteps in the hallway, whispered communications of a coordinated team, the subtle sounds of professionals preparing for violence. The Torinos had found him, and this time they'd brought enough firepower to sink a destroyer. Through his tactical radio, Joel's voice crackled. 8 hostiles, professional gear. Elevator disabled, stairwells covered. They're not here to negotiate. Daniel's phone vibrated with an incoming message. A photo of Emma and Michael at their school, surrounded by men in dark suits. The message was clear. Cooperate or watch your children die. That changed everything. This was no longer about operational security or personal vendetta. This was about family, and Daniel Bradford had spent 15 years learning that some things were worth any sacrifice to protect. He activated his radio. Mitchell, are you monitoring? Copy that. Phoenix Protocol is now active. Initiate all emergency procedures immediately. Roger. What's your status? Compromised but mobile. The children are in immediate danger. Understood. Cavalry is en route. As Daniel prepared for what could be his final battle, he thought about the SEAL creed that had guided him through 15 years of naval special warfare. I will never quit. I persevere and thrive on adversity. The Torinos thought they had him cornered. They were about to discover that cornering a Navy SEAL was like trapping a great white shark, dangerous for everyone involved. Daniel holstered his weapon and opened the suite door. Felix Higgins was a professional. That much was immediately obvious. Mid-40s, expensive suit, the kind of calm confidence that came from never having to personally handle violence. Behind him stood 6 men who definitely did handle violence, all armed and positioned to cover multiple angles of attack, like a coordinated boarding party. "Thank you for being reasonable," Higgins said. "Shall we discuss terms? Where are my children?" "Safe for now. Their continued well-being depends entirely on your cooperation." What Higgins didn't know was that Daniel had already activated every protocol learned during 15 years of naval special warfare. His tactical radio was broadcasting to Joel's team positioned throughout the building. Garrett was systematically taking control of hotel security systems. And in a suburban elementary school, former Marine Force Recon operator Marcus Webb was executing a precision operation to extract 2 children from armed surveillance. "I'll need guarantees," Daniel said, buying time as his network moved into position. "Proof that my children are unharmed. Verification that you'll honor any agreement." Higgins smiled, gesturing to one of his men who produced a tablet computer. On the screen was live video feed from the children's school. Emma and Michael sitting in what appeared to be the principal's office, flanked by 2 men in suits. "As you can see, they're perfectly safe. Confused about why they've been removed from class, but unharmed." Daniel's phone vibrated once, the signal from Marcus that the children were secure. A second vibration confirmed Jennifer was safe. A third vibration meant Joel's team was in position. "There," Daniel said, hitting a final key sequence on the laptop Higgins had provided. "Transfer complete." What Higgins was looking at was a sophisticated decoy program that would keep him occupied for the 30 seconds Daniel needed. "This is quite impressive, Mr. Bradford. Our organization will make excellent use of this information." "I'm sure you will," Daniel agreed, then activated the smoke grenades he'd palmed from his equipment bag. The hotel suite filled with thick, choking smoke as Daniel rolled backward over the sofa. Higgins's men opened fire, but they were shooting blind while Daniel, who had memorized their positions during the conversation, eliminated threats with surgical precision. The suite door exploded inward as Joel's team breached the room. Within seconds, the engagement was over. Felix Higgins lay unconscious, the only survivor of his 6-man team. "Status report," Daniel demanded as the smoke cleared. "Children secure," Joel reported. "Marcus has them in protective custody. Jennifer safe. Mitchell's team extracted her from the warehouse 20 minutes ago." Through the hotel room's windows, Daniel could see FBI vehicles surrounding the building. In the distance, police helicopters circled other locations throughout the city, a coordinated law enforcement operation dismantling years of Torino influence in a single night. But as Daniel had learned during countless SEAL operations, the most dangerous moment often came after apparent victory. 6 months later, Daniel stood in the backyard of their new house, watching Emma and Michael play on the swing set he'd built for them. The house was smaller than their previous home, but situated on 3 acres of wooded land that provided natural security barriers and multiple escape routes. Old habits that Jennifer had learned not to question. The Witness Protection Program had been officially terminated after Gilberto Torino's death 3 months earlier. A heart attack suffered in his sleep that surprised no one who knew his health history and the federal pressure that had destroyed his organization. "Coffee's ready," Jennifer called from the kitchen door. Daniel made his way inside, past boxes they were still unpacking and the security equipment he'd discreetly installed throughout the house. The kitchen table was covered with mail, school enrollment forms, and the detritus of a family trying to rebuild their normal life. "Any interesting mail?" Daniel asked, settling into his chair. Jennifer handed him a manila envelope with no return address. Inside was a newspaper clipping describing Gilberto Torino as a beloved community patriarch and successful businessman. Attached was a handwritten note. "Il debito è stato pagato." "The debt has been paid." "What is it?" Jennifer asked. "Nothing important," Daniel replied, filing the note away mentally. The Torino organization had kept their word. There had been no further threats, no bounty hunters, no midnight phone calls. The war was truly over. His phone rang. Mitchell's number. "Morning, partner. How's domestic life treating you?" "Like shore leave with better coffee," Daniel replied. "What's the situation at the office?" "Busy. Very busy. Apparently, word has gotten out about our recent activities. We've got 3 new contracts this week. All high-security maritime operations. All very well-paying." Daniel wasn't surprised. In the private security world, successfully taking on organized crime was the kind of reputation builder that led to exponentially more business. Bradford Associates was now fielding inquiries from multinational corporations, foreign governments, and wealthy individuals who wanted the same level of protection that had kept Daniel's family safe. Any of them interesting? All of them. But there's one that might particularly appeal to you. Remember Victor Klov? Daniel went very still. "Klov's dead. I killed him myself in Somalia. His brother isn't. Dmitry Klov has taken over what's left of the family arms dealing operation, and he's apparently been asking questions about the Navy SEAL operatives who eliminated Victor." "How do you know this?" "Because he reached out to us directly. Wants to hire Bradford Associates to provide maritime security for a weapons transaction in Montenegro next month." Daniel processed this information. Dmitry Klov hiring the man who'd killed his brother was either supremely confident or supremely stupid. More likely, it was a trap designed to lure Daniel into hostile waters where Klov could exact revenge. "Thoughts?" Mitchell asked. Daniel looked out the kitchen window at his children, who were laughing as they chased each other around the yard. Emma had started a new school and was already making friends. Michael had joined a Little League team and was excited about his first game next weekend. They deserved a father who came home every night, not one who disappeared on mysterious maritime operations to deal with arms dealers in foreign waters. "No," Daniel said finally. "We don't take contracts that put family at risk anymore, even high-paying ones with interesting challenges, especially those." After ending the call, Daniel found Jennifer in their bedroom, unpacking clothes and arranging them in the walk-in closet. She'd been quieter than usual during the move, and he could sense something weighing on her mind. "What's bothering you?" he asked. She sat on the edge of the bed, holding one of his old Naval Special Warfare Commendation plaques. "Do you ever regret it? Giving up that life, becoming just another suburban security consultant?" The question hung in the air like morning mist over calm water. Daniel considered it seriously. 15 years of international maritime operations, classified missions, and life-or-death situations had been replaced by corporate security consultations, background checks, and the occasional investigation of insurance fraud. On paper, it looked like a significant step down. But when Emma ran into the bedroom to show them a drawing she'd made of their new house, when Michael asked for help with his math homework, when Jennifer fell asleep beside him without the nightmares that had plagued her for months, those moments felt more important than any SEAL operation he'd ever completed. "No," he said. "It's enough." That evening, the family had dinner together at their new kitchen table. Emma talked about her teacher, who she thought was probably the nicest person in the world. Michael described his baseball practice, complete with dramatic reenactments of his catching technique. Jennifer announced that she'd found a part-time job at a local art gallery, legitimate employment that had nothing to do with money laundering or criminal boyfriends. Later that night, after the children were asleep and Jennifer was reading in bed, Daniel stood on his back porch and looked out at the woods surrounding their property. Somewhere in those trees, motion sensors and cameras maintained discreet perimeter watch. Old habits died hard, and some precautions were worth maintaining. But for the first time in years, Daniel Bradford felt genuinely at peace. The ghosts of his past were finally at rest, and the shadows that had threatened his family had been banished permanently. In the distance, an owl called out across the darkness, a sound of wilderness and freedom that reminded Daniel that some things were worth any sacrifice to protect. He'd been a warrior for 15 years, moving through the world's most dangerous waters and eliminating threats to American interests. Now he was something different, a husband, a father, A man who'd chosen family over adventure and found that the choice brought its own kind of fulfillment. The war was over. The SEAL had finally come home. And for Daniel Bradford, that was the most successful mission of all.